The Levy referendum 2015, we've titled it Restoring Our Strength and Building Our Future, because it does involve two questions that really focuses on those two themes. As all of our work, we align our needs to our mission and vision. And our vision of world-class personalized learning is really about building pathways so our students are successful. And being able to meet their individual needs as a learner is really key to all of our students' success. Little walk down memory lane here. Many folks have said, didn't you just have a Levy referendum? And yes, we did. In 2013, we had a successful operational referendum, and that was for the purposes on the screen, primarily addressing elementary class sizes. We had come to that decision as a board and as administration after two different surveys of the community, finding out what the priorities were. And it was clear that people had a growing concern about our class sizes, and at that time, many of our elementary class sizes, even especially at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade level, were creeping up beyond 35 students in a class. So it was really getting to be challenging to have a quality learning environment. In addition, those community surveys also provided us consistent information from our communities around STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And so the board and the district and building level administration really started to take notice about our needs and audited our curriculum and really focused on why we would need to move into an area of STEM. And as we all know, that's where there are many, many job opportunities, and that's growing exponentially. So we did focus as well on a foundational introduction of STEAM. We added art design at the elementary level. So currently all of our students grades 1 through 5 enjoy hands-on opportunities in engineering once a week in their elementary programming. So what's important about that is we have used the Levy referendum success from 2013 exactly as we promised our community. We've been able to reduce class sizes at the elementary as well as introducing STEAM. I think it's important to note that before 2013, there were a number of times that the district came out and asked the community for an operational or a capital levy referendum. But from 03 to 13, there were no successful referendums. 2003, the last successful was a bond and an operational to support the opening of Lakeville South. So that was a lot of years of budget adjustments that add up to about $26 million and quite a bit of staff layoffs, program reductions, and as parents in this room probably know, having to increase fees and transportation as well as activities. So we're trying to kind of reverse all of that and really have done a lot of work in the last few years around organizational efficiency. So we can talk to that individually with folks, but there's been a lot of work done to really get our budget in a really strong, fiscally responsible state. So with that, we'll move into what this referendum is all about. And as I mentioned earlier, there are two questions, because when you go out for a referendum, you can't just put operational and capital dollars together. You have to ask your taxpayers separately about those two types of questions. So the first question is actually the capital question, but the two areas, operational and capital. Operational, really, once again, we're focusing on the three top priorities based on lots of surveying. We surveyed not only our community through an external survey, this time we took those same questions and deployed those ourselves to the parents, to the business community through the chamber, as well as to our staff. So we had 4 stakeholder groups that we were looking at, and brought all of that data and information for the board to analyze. And although there were lots of things mentioned beyond the list of those three. Those three were the top priorities and the biggest concern of our stakeholders at the current time. And then same approach with the capital question, determining what the priorities were. And as you'll see throughout the presentation, or a little later in the presentation, that all four of those stakeholder groups did have those three capital needs defined in their top three. They were in different orders with different groups. Three of the four groups, STEM was the top priority, and making sure that we have STEM programming consistently throughout our first through or K through 12 programming. So we'll move into the operational question first and understanding a little bit more information about that. So as I mentioned in 2013, or prior to 2013, our elementary class sizes were creeping up. Those are the average class sizes across K through 5. And then you can see the following 2 years, since we've had that successful levy referendum, those dollars have been used to bring down class size, and we've been able to stabilize that and keep consistently much more manageable class sizes at the elementary level. So right now we're facing a similar issue at the high school level. We do participate in the Metro EXU class size study for the last few years. In the last 2 years, it has come back that our high school class sizes are the highest in the metropolitan region. Typically about 38 to 40 districts across the metro participate in that study. So the red line is the metro average, and the blue lines are English, math, science, and social studies, and the blue chart obviously is Lakeville's high school, both of them. So that's the last 2 years and what it's looking like for us. And I know those numbers are small. So for social studies, science, it's just around 33, 34. That's a little deceiving. We do have to report even classes like special education, pull-out, special programming class that might have a smaller class size of 10 or 12 students with a teacher in there. So that does bring down the average, but it's a level playing field. Everyone is reporting all of their classes throughout their high school. If you're in our high schools, and if you're a parent here of a high schooler, you know that most of our core classes are hitting about 40, some even a little bit higher than that. At our high school. So that has been a main concern. The board receives a lot of emails, and it came out pretty loud and clear on the survey that continues to be a concern. These three images and words really kind of speak for themselves, but they are the reason why an organization would want to focus on class size. It's really important for a teacher to be able to give quality feedback and consistent ongoing feedback to the learners in their classroom. And obviously, the more learners you have, the more difficult that becomes. So those relationships, the opportunity to get some personal attention and feedback from your teacher on a consistent basis, and then just being able to manage your job and do it at a high quality. Now, what this referendum would bring is the equivalent of 7 teachers, and that would reduce student to teacher ratio. Now, if you remember from the earlier slide, in 2013, we were able to add 20 teachers to our elementary programming to bring down class size. And it's quite a different story when you're adding teachers at the high school level. It impacts many more students because teachers at the high school level teach 5 sections or 5 courses. So when you add a teacher, they're able to bring down class size, say, for a whole grade level. So if you add a teacher to freshman English, that is going to impact all the English classes because the English teachers have just increased. So it really has a big impact, and you can really do quite a lot. The 7.0 that we're looking at would bring all our core classes below 35 at our high school. The operational question also reinstates art as it was in 2010 when it was eliminated from our programming. So that is once a week for 1st through 5th graders taught by an art specialist. And then finally, the third area of the operational levy referendum is the reintroduction of 5th grade band. And again, we would reinstate 5th grade band at the state that it was when it was eliminated. So that's an opportunity for 5th graders before school and lessons during the day while they're at school. With that, we'll move to the capital question, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jason Molesky, and he's going to talk us a little bit through the capital side of the levy referendum.
All right, good evening. As Dr. Snyder indicated on the operational question, we really did a lot of work to determine what were the community priorities. Granted, those priorities didn't match what everybody was indicating, but those were the three that came out the most. The board, Dr. Snyder and others have heard a number of other priorities from members throughout the community, world languages and so on, and other items that could be addressed by an operational. But when looking at limited dollars, the board opted to go with the top three that came up. A similar strategy was utilized for the capital question that's on the ballot. When looking at all of our stakeholder groups, our parents, our community members, our staff, our students, even our business community, we kept seeing three items come to the top that could be addressed with a stable capital funding source. Those were safety and security, the technology and the resources behind that particular aspect, STEM resources, science, technology, engineering, and math, so building upon what the district was able to do in the past, and then also digital tools for learning, looking at providing a secure funding stream to fund technology needs across the district. As you can see by those four graphs up there, those items didn't always come in the same rank order for every group. Different groups had different priorities, but as we looked across all of the different groups, those three items were the top three priorities that kept coming up. So that's really what framed the three items that we'll talk about tonight. Again, there were other items that were tested and asked for and certainly requested by the community and others, but in terms of priority order, with limited funding, with a limited request, those were the three that the district has chosen to focus on. So to talk about each of those, we're going to split amongst three of us here, and certainly at the end, if you have specific questions around any of those, we'll be happy to get up and address them as well. So we'll start with safety and security, and I'll turn it over to our Executive Director of Business Services, Michael Bauman, to address that.
Thank you, Jason, and good evening, all. Oh, you already hit the chart for me. Sorry. With regard to student safety, this past fiscal year, the Board of Education Administration, using general fund dollars, made a considerable investment in security measures. Because a capital levy is limited to security measures or information technology type systems, we are looking at really three major areas of further support. Because of that particular decision by the Board of Education, we have recently been able to deploy and activate information systems that are for visitor management and access control. These systems will aid us in improving our overall security across the district. And because of that investment, our future investment, we assess, does not need to be as extensive as we might have otherwise had to do. And again, it's one component of multiple components for school safety. But because we had school safety dollars and some general fund investment in fiscal year 15, we sit in a good position. What we want to use the capital funds for moving forward are to enhance our visitor management system access control, to do internal security, which includes really two components: security cameras and the ability to use magnetic lock systems for both perimeter and internal compartmental security. In other words, having the ability to seal off different parts of the building using automated systems and electronic magnetic locking systems. And so there's also one other component that we want to stay ahead of, and that is any kind of emerging security technologies that may be come available over the life of the capital levy. So we're looking at the ability to invest $100,000 a year and $1 million over 10 years in order to enhance and improve the systems that we have existing currently. And with that, I will hand off to our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Barb Knutson.
Thank you, Michael. No, you can click it. Good evening to all of you. With this capital levy, what we would be looking to do is to support STEM programming by providing engaging resources, making sure that all of our students have access to STEM, and making sure that we are developing our students with future-ready skills so more career pathways are available to them than are now with our current programming. Some people look at the word STEM and say, I'm not real sure what that means. Well, it's commonly defined as an approach to teaching and learning in which students solve real-world problems by using science, technology, engineering, and math practices in real-world projects or relevant field experiences. I think earlier we had a comment from Dr. Snyder about the fact that 3 of the 4 groups said that STEM was an absolute priority, that we really wanted to have our students to be future ready. I just want to share an anecdotal comment to you from some students. We have the STEM programming at our high school right now, and we had to close enrollment because we have 380 students and a waiting list of kids to want to get into that program. Our students, like our parents and community members, know that this is a particular need. The Minnesota Department of, I get this wrong, Economic and Employment has come out with a few stats that I'd like to share with you. One of those is that 18 of the 20 fastest growing careers are in STEM. New job is growing at the rate of 11%. STEM job growth is 3 times faster than non-STEM jobs. And entry-level opportunities in Minnesota will be 57,700 new STEM workers between 2009 and 2019. I think the other thing to point out is when our students graduate, if they have a STEM foundation, they are able to go directly into a STEM career, or they can get a certificate, or they can go to a 2-year program or a 4-year program. Many opportunities. So when you see up there engaging resources, here's what we're looking at. In elementary, we already have adopted engineering as elementary for our students. But what we find is that we have a lot of consumable costs that are part of that program. And we're finding that as our kids develop the experiences in STEM, they get really smart. And so we've put some programming into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that may not have the level of rigor that's needed after students have that programming in 1st and 2nd grade. At the middle level, I'm sad to say that currently we do not have any programming for our students in STEM. So we formed a task force of parents and staff and administration to look at Project Lead the Way Gateway as a program to bring in for our students. With that program, students get work in coding, robotics, forensics, bioengineering, and a variety of other pathways. In grades 9 through 12, we started the STEM Academy 2 years ago. And as I said, we have a waiting list now for students who want to be involved in it. We have 5 career pathways. We have general engineering, we have environmental engineering, informational technologies, industrial technologies, and want to move into bioengineering and medical technologies. But with that, there's a lot of expense with the resources. And so what we'd be looking is to expand for that program. STEM access for all. With the design of this program, every student will have access to STEM in grades 1st through 8th. Then when they get to 9th grade, they have the opportunity to self-select into one of those 5 career pathways. And then finally, I think our goal here is to make sure that we have a comprehensive program with a solid foundation for all of our students so that they can self-select career pathways that are different than what we have today. And with that, I think I turn it back to Jason.
All right. Now, the final portion of the capital request is to provide a consistent, stable funding source for our technology needs in the district, our digital tools for learning. This is one area where we as a district really want to make sure the public, our staff, our parents, our students really understand exactly what the vision is for technology in the district, because I think as you look at a lot of other districts around the metro area, you see a lot of different models, and as you look nationwide, you see a lot of different ways that schools are implementing technology within their classrooms. We as a district have really taken a very measured approach to the use of digital tools in the classroom. We've taken our time over the last 4 years to really explore a variety of different avenues for using digital tools within the classes. We haven't gone all in with providing a device for every student, which some districts have done. Other districts have gone the route of requiring or strongly requesting that students bring their own digital tools to school for learning purposes. We've looked at both of those approaches, and we've talked to our parents, we've talked to our staff, we've talked to our students, and we've really determined that the best future for Lakeville is to focus on what we call a balanced learning approach. And that is really respecting the fact that our teachers can do some really amazing things with digital tools in their classrooms. They're afforded some great opportunities for learning, but we also recognize our teachers do a lot of amazing things without digital tools, using traditional paper and pencil approaches. And we don't want to be in a position to force a teacher one way or the other. So we really don't view the use of digital tools as an all or nothing proposition. We're trying to look at providing somewhat of a balanced approach and just increasing the level of access to those tools so they're available when our teachers feel it's the most appropriate for their students to use. So what this secure funding source would do is really take a look at providing an environment that supports that balanced approach, not in a one-to-one or anything like that, but by providing increased equitable access to our students. Currently, as we look at our landscape across the district, where a student goes to school can really determine the amount of access they have to some of these learning opportunities. Some schools have been able to provide an awful lot more when it comes to digital tools than others have, either through the generosity of their parent-teacher organizations or their building level budgets. What we would seek to do is, as a district, really level the playing field and allow for an equal opportunity for students at any one of our buildings. As mentioned, Lakeville is not alone in using digital tools within their classrooms. As we look at the metro region and all of the associated districts around us, many districts have taken a very solid approach in terms of providing devices for their students. Many of the districts provide a digital tool for every student in grades 4 through 12, or some even K through 12. Others have taken the approach of encouraging their students to bring their own. Again, we've taken a measured approach, and we've tested and field tested some of those within our classrooms, and we found benefits and disadvantages to both of those. With bring your own device approaches, we found you have the benefit of not having to invest heavily in digital tools, but at the same time there are some equity issues in terms of students not having or not choosing to bring their own devices. As we look at districts that have gone one-to-one, we found great opportunities for learning within the classroom, but also a significant investment. In fact, if you look at many of our comparable districts around the metro area, many schools will spend upwards of $2.5 to $6.5 million per year through their capital levies to fund technology needs. As a district, we recognize that's a very significant investment, and as I indicated, we're looking at more of a balanced approach and requesting in this levy $1.5 million per year. Not to go the route of one-to-one, not to go the route of a device for every child, but again, to support that balanced environment, and most importantly, help replace and update our core technologies. Currently, our technological infrastructure, our computer labs, our printers, our general technology that our teachers use in their classrooms and so on, is funded through our general fund dollars. We don't have a dedicated source for that. So when the time comes to update computers, like we'll have to do in the next year, the board has to make the decision about how to fund that for the upcoming years. Currently, our computer labs are pushing about 7 to 8 years old. By the time funding would be available from this capital levy, they'd be almost a decade old, which is obsolete by most standards when it comes to the use of digital tools, let alone tools that are used by 8, 9, and 10-year-olds. So the primary purpose of this stable funding source would be to allow for the replacement and the update of those computer labs and other core technologies, but also provide additional student access. That would be in the form of shared sets of devices for grade levels. So, for example, if you have a third grade student, not every student would be guaranteed the use of a device, but their teacher would have access to a handful of them. So if there's a learning opportunity or a chance for them to really provide a different experience for a student that better meets their needs, they could access a device and use it with that student. Or, if necessary, they could gather all of the devices for a grade level and utilize a whole class opportunity if that was deemed best by the teacher. So we'd be looking at more of a 3-to-1 approach. We feel a much more responsible approach with the use of those digital tools, and certainly much more reasonable as compared to other districts. And finally, the last piece, again with a consistent funding source, would be the support and maintenance of those devices over time. We know technology ages, it needs repair, it needs support as time goes on. So we'd be looking at dedicating approximately 1% of our entire district budget to provide for all of that, the support and maintenance, the updates, and then that increased access for our students. So in very broad general terms, we'd be looking at utilizing this funding source in a variety of ways. Again, for our core technologies, for increased student access for our students and teachers, for the teacher technology and so on, and for very clear replacement cycles for those so that we ensure our students and our teachers are using up-to-date software and hardware and don't have to rely on board decisions to figure out how to fund replacing them when the time comes. We do have very detailed information on the proposed purchasing with this. That's available on our website, isd194.org. So I invite you to look for additional resources there if you'd like, or we can certainly address some of that at the end of this presentation as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Snyder for the second portion.
Okay, we're getting here toward the end. We did want to show you what the ballot questions look like, because they look a little bit different than common language. You might yourself create this question. We have legal requirements, and so there's some information there. But the important thing that I'd like to point out is that your Board of Education voted unanimously to include the items that we're funding. So there's a high level of accountability to use the levy referendum revenue exactly as we are indicating. So those that maybe didn't come see the presentation or haven't been able to see the print materials or the videos will go into the voting booth and be able to see exactly what they're voting for or against. And then the second question, the operational question, very similar. It talks about lowering class size, teacher to student ratio, and reinstating art and fifth grade band. With that, we want to give you a little bit of financial context, and Michael's going to come back up and do that.
So what you see depicted here in the chart is just provided for context. It is not a statement of performance. And what you see here are the top 20 school districts by enrollment and the per pupil funding that Lakeville had in fiscal year 14 revenue. And this breaks down into state sources and federal sources. And then with one build, you can see where Lakeville, out of the 20 top districts in enrollment, was sitting in the 20th position for the state of Minnesota. I also want to show this build here. The blue adds in the property tax, and again, that's per pupil funding. So right here, at this point, we're just under 10,000 at 9,000 plus for per pupil funding. Again, just context relative to the top 20 school districts in the state of Minnesota by enrollment. The next chart I want to show you is where we were with the operating levy that was passed back in November of 13 for fiscal year 14. And again, this shows two things. Some school districts have capital levies, and some have operating, and some have both. If you see green only, those are school districts with operating only. And again, it's still the top 20 by enrollment. And just to give you context of position in terms of how we look against that. The build here shows where Lakeville is about $1,097 per pupil in funding from that operating levy. The other schools that you see highlighted in yellow are school districts that are also going out for operating levies in the next cycle. But that's kind of where we sit, again, just positionally and context. Now, if we were able to pass both the capital and the operating referendum levies, we would move slightly. Again, I show us dynamically. I can't really show what the other school districts would do by vote, so they remain static. So they could very well move upwards. And again, it's just to show context, and this would depict Lakeville with both a capital and an operating levy. So that's what the blue represents on the bar chart. The only other thing I'd say about these is the context of relativity in terms of comparing to other school districts, remaining a comparison for the top 20 by enrollment is just one standard that you can look at. It's not the end-all be-all, and it's certainly not a performance indicator. But we wanted to share that with you so that everybody understood kind of where we are as far as reasonableness or a reasonableness test with regard to the amount of money that we're asking for. Also want to just state straight out that the capital question would, on a $257,000 home, would be $77. This is annual. For the first year, this would be the increase, and then $49 for the operating levy, and if both were to pass, on a $257,000 valued home, it would be a $126 increase on the property tax to support these. This is a chart that also brings in commercial, industrial, and apartment numbers, so you can kind of see where that might stack up if you have any of those kind of properties that concern your property tax. And I'll hand it back to Dr. Snyder.
Well, I think we're at about 33 minutes, and we promised a 30 to 35-minute presentation this evening. We do have a number of board members here this evening, so you can feel free to ask any of them or comment to any of them as well. Director Erickson is over here. Over here is Director Jim Skelly. I think Kathy Lewis, did she have to leave? Okay. And Director Terry Lynn and Director Judy Kelleher. They're all here this evening to answer your questions as well. With that, wanted to share with you the details. We will have 20 precincts operating on November 3rd, so it should be easy to vote. People will go to vote where they typically do. There is absentee ballot information that you can fill out an application, and the new laws are anyone can vote absentee, so if you're not going to be in town or it's not convenient for you on that day, that's an opportunity as well.